Wait! Listen! Join us for a tale in the dark elder days when the land of Denmark was ruled over by a great and powerful king. A king known all across the known world. King Hrothgar, the mighty lord, the ring giver, the gift giver. A king who had amassed a treasure hoard of gold and silver and jewels after many years of fighting in the battlefields. This king used his mighty wealth to build a ginormous hall, a hall called Heorot. And in Heorot, this king would host feasts where stories would be told, where songs would be sung, and where food was plenty. These parties were mighty and loud. The king would give gifts of gold. Everyone who went would wear a ring around their wrist, showing that they had been guests in Heorot, this great hall. That was before the dark days. One night, many guests arrived at the hall, hoping to hear a mighty tale, taking part in the king's mighty feasts. 30 warriors gathering within those halls. As the night grew darker, many left, returning to their chambers and homes. Only 30 stayed behind to guard the king's treasure hoard and continue feasting into the night. They eventually fell asleep, not expecting what was emerging from the marshy moors, from a cave deep beneath a lake. Something foul slipped out of those waters that night, approaching the hall, climbing the stairs towards the great door, its horrible feet clattering. Clawed hand reaching out towards the door handle, grabs the door and pushes it open. Eyes scanning the room, looking around. Many sleeping warriors. One by one, it grabs them up, taking them back to its lair beneath the lake. As people returned to the hall that morning, it was empty. For this hall had been visited by an unwelcome guest, a foul creature, a creature with a name. Grendel, the unwelcome guest. For 12 long years this monster terrorized the hall. 12 years of darkness, 12 years of sorrow, and 12 years of misery. The king began to lose his honour. He was not as popular as he used to be. No one wanted to come to the hall to feast. Nobody wanted to stay there after darkness for fear of that monster that prowled the halls at night. Eventually, stories of this monster travelled all around the known world, eventually reaching a land ruled by the Geats. And amongst the Geats there lived a brave young man, a warrior called Beowulf. Legend says that Beowulf had the strength of 20 fully grown warriors in one hand and 20 in the other. He was the most valued warrior in Geatland. And he vowed to travel across the sea, to go to Denmark and to fight this monster. So off he went with his companions, setting sail across the stormy sea, landing in Denmark and travelling to the hall of Hrothgar. There he made a mighty boast, a boast that would echo through the ages. I am Beowulf, and I am here to face this monster Grendel. Tonight, after feasting and storytelling, I will stay behind and face this monster. But I hear that this monster fights with its bare hands. So tonight, I, Beowulf, will forsake any weapon or armour, and I will fight this monster Grendel with my bare hands. So the Danes spent the night singing and telling stories and taking mighty oaths to their king. and as the sun started to set and night crept upon the land, all left the hall, leaving Beowulf and his companions behind. Beowulf sat by the fire, waiting for the inevitable, waiting for what would happen. He listened and he heard the sound of footsteps approaching the hall. In crept the foul monster, green of skin with brown hair, horrible claws and teeth. Grendel had entered the hall of Heorot. Looking around, he spotted brave Beowulf, and with a roar, the monster lurched at Beowulf, grabbing at him, but Beowulf was far too quick for that. He grabbed the monster back and they started to fight, a fight that would echo throughout the ages and be known as a story of legend. After many hours of fighting, the furniture was smashed and the walls were shaken, the timbers were cracking. And as the sun started to rise, a terrible sound could be heard, a blood-curdling roar from the monster. And the monster left the hall. People began to return, looking in through the door to see if Beowulf had survived. And they saw mighty Beowulf stood there, holding in his hand a giant, monstrous arm. An arm that he had ripped off the monster Grendel. Beowulf had defeated the monster. And as the Danes returned, they let out a great cheer. Hooray! Grendel had been defeated. So the king put on a feast immediately, a great party that would echo the halls with music and dance. Many bulls were eaten that night. Gifts of gold were given. Beowulf was gifted a sword, armour, a helmet. He was made richer than any could imagine, because Beowulf had solved King Hrothgar's problem. And while they celebrated Beowulf's victory, down on the moors, sat beside the lake, Grendel wept because he was dying. With one last gasp, his lifeless body splashed into the water, sinking, reclaimed by hell itself. But the story doesn't end there, because in a cave deep beneath that lake, the crying noise of a mother could be heard. Beowulf's quest isn't over, because Grendel's mother, the sea hag, swears to have revenge on Beowulf, King Hrothgar, and all the Danes. But that is a story for another time.